So if you've been watching this YouTube channel or listened to our podcast, you know the power of Roth. You know how to utilize the lower tax brackets we have now, expecting that tax rates are going to go up in the future. And so what I may say today may shock you, but we want to understand that there's no one-sidedness in financial planning. There's not one strategy that's always going to work. It's going to depend on your specific situation, what are your goals, and what are you trying to do. And so in today's episode, we're going to talk about why you should not Roth convert or when it does not make sense to. And we're also going to emphasize that, hey, maybe we shouldn't convert everything. So regardless of where you're at, this is going to be helpful for you to get a feel of what is that optimal amount to have in each of those buckets. How much in tax-free, how much in tax-deferred. And so that's what we're going to talk about on today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement. So there's 3 reasons why you should not convert everything you have. And one of the main reasons why is because of the standard deduction. So the standard deduction, if you're married, it's right around $30,000. I think it's about $29,200 this year for 2024. And then if you're single, it's about half of that. And so what the standard deduction means is that if your income is under the standard deduction, you pay no taxes. So here's an example for you. Let's say that your income this year is $25,000 and you're married. Well, how much tax are you going to be required to pay at the end of the year if that's all you have? Right, the answer is 0 because of the standard deduction. And so for all taxpayers right now, 90% of them take the standard deduction because that is so high. You know, that is going to get cut in half in 2026 due to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So just be aware at that time, you're going to have less of that free money up front, which may be a disadvantage. But do understand that many of the itemized deductions are going to become more advantageous for you there. So maybe you're going to be able to itemize, get those charitable deductions that you maybe haven't gotten any deductions for recently to add some value there. So just be aware of that. But typically what we're saying with this standard deduction, if we know we're going to have that amount of tax-free income up front throughout retirement, let's make sure we're strategic and not leaving that money on the table. And so if we're expecting ourselves just to have Social Security, just to have investment withdrawals from our IRA, well, why would we move everything to a Roth if we're going to have $30,000 of room to take out money from our IRA and not pay any taxes? Well, that's almost the equivalent of a Roth is the idea of it. And so that's why we want to be very aware of that we always want to leave enough money for that. Typically what we're seeing with our clients, again, it's going to depend on many factors of what's their Social Security, do they have a pension, but typically just for this point alone, we're looking at leaving our clients anywhere from $350,000 to $500,000, give or take a few $100,000 on top or right below that, in that tax-deferred bucket, bare minimum. And so I had a guy come to me one time, he said, Joe, I've got $3 million in my IRA, I love this, what you're talking about, I loved your book on I Hate Taxes, let's convert everything. And I said, hold on. And I did a calculation for him, and I said, would you rather pay $1.5 million today, that's what the cost would be if you do this today, or would you rather do this over a period of time and probably don't convert everything because we can utilize a standard deduction with some of this $3 million. And so we were able to show him that we could actually reduce his total lifetime tax bill to approximately $500,000. And now, would you rather pay $1.5 million or $500,000? And so that's the idea with smart strategic planning. You may not have to convert everything, but you could still end up paying less taxes over time than you could pay more taxes if you convert everything right now versus just doing it strategically. So that's the other thing to understand is, one, don't do it all in 1 year typically. Sometimes it can make sense, but not typically. But also to make sure you understand that it's okay to have some money into IRA. And that's really what leads me to the second point here is why you should not convert everything is, hey, ensure that you have diversification. So the way I always explain this is, do you have all your money in Bitcoin? Is all your money just in one investment? Do you have all your money just in Apple stock? Well, if that's the case, you're probably not following the advice you've received all your life of, hey, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Something you've probably always heard is diversification, right? Make sure that you have it spread out so that if one thing goes down, you've got something to cover up and make sure that you're good to go moving forward. Well, that's the same idea with the 2 buckets that I'm talking about. Tax deferred, tax free. IRA, Roth, right? We have these 2 buckets that we've been saving into. And what we're seeing today is that most people have their money in tax deferred and very little people have money in a Roth. And so if that's the case, is that good diversification? If that's you, do you feel like you've got the right balance in your retirement accounts from a tax standpoint? And if that's not the case, we need to look to have more of a balance here. And the reason why is because we have no idea what tax rates are going to be in the future. Tax rates could be higher, they could be lower. I'm not expecting it, but they could be because the tax code's written in pencil. And I hate to tell you, I wish I had the pencil. I'm sorry if you're watching this hoping I had the pencil, but I don't. The government has the pencil and they can make it whatever they want. And so if that's the case, what I prefer is to have balance, to have the control, to be able to choose which bucket I want to take out money from, depending on the circumstance, depending on what my income is going to be that year, depending on if I'm going to take Social Security or not that year, depending on what my Medicare premiums look like for that year. And then you can make strategic decisions every single year to do this. And so this is something we do with a lot of our clients throughout their retirement is, hey, we're helping them when they need income from their investments. A lot of people say when they first come see us, I'm retired, I no longer have a paycheck coming in, I don't know where to take the money out from. And so through tax smart income planning is what we call it, you can really make sure your money is preserved as long as possible. But also when you pass away, you can make sure there's a better legacy left behind. Whatever your goal is, it can really help maximize your income over time. And so that's something that we're seeing there with that diversification and just making sure you don't have all your eggs in one basket. Again, what that right balance is for you is going to depend on your situation. But typically we don't see a balance the opposite way. Like we just explained, we don't see everyone have their money tax-free and very little in tax deferred. We typically want to see more of a balance. Maybe not necessarily for 50-50, maybe for some people it may be. Maybe it's 80-20, maybe it's 70-30. It's just going to depend on what that optimum amount is, right? How much do we need to utilize the standard deduction and all those different things that we're looking out for. So the third thing that kind of goes into this conversation, another reason why to leave more in a tax deferred and not convert everything, is for qualified charitable distribution. So I'm sure you're aware of this strategy that when you're 70 and a half, you can start gifting money from your IRA to a charity tax-free, no taxes due. And so if that's the case, do we want to have all of our money in a Roth? Where if we give money from a Roth to a charity, that's tax-free, but what do we already do? We already pay taxes. So this could be a way that, hey, maybe we leave that $500,000 to cover the standard deduction. And then maybe your goal is, I want to leave $10,000 a year for the next 20 years. Okay, well now we need to leave another $200,000. So that maybe now we leave $700,000 in an IRA. And so depending on your situation, that may be the case. And if you have $1 million, maybe you only have to get $300,000 converted to a Roth. And if you do that over the next 2 years, that may not be a big tax burden to you. And especially doing it in the next 2 low tax rate years, may be a good idea for you. Or maybe you look to stretch it out. Maybe you're in the 12% or 15% bracket. You can stretch it out a few years. Or maybe you look to wait to take Social Security and try to do that $300,000 conversions within the next few years while you don't have Social Security, while you don't have to worry about tax on your Social Security. And then that could really help you ensure you pay the least amount of taxes over time. But when you do pay the taxes, you're paying at the least amount of rate before the future when you turn on Social Security, Medicare premiums, all the things that we've talked about all the time. And so those are the three main reasons. And understand with the QCD, that qualified charitable distribution I'm talking about, even if you're not 70 and a half, this is still something to plan for. So you may think, well, I'm not 70 and a half, I can't do that, I won't worry about it. Well, no, even if you're 65, well, we still need to know that if you're planning to do this type of strategy, we need to start planning for it now, as we just discussed, to make sure we have the right optimal amount in the buckets. This type of planning, you want to be proactive, you want to get ahead of it, and you want to make sure that you're looking ahead, and not only today, but the next 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, to make sure you have the most optimal plan. And again, we don't know what's going to happen in 20 years. We don't know what tax rates are going to be, but we have to make sure we're making a guess of how can we best structure the plan, and then reevaluating every single year. And so something we get a lot of times is people come to us and say, hey, can you just help me put together a 1-year tax plan? And I'm like, we don't do that, because a tax plan with us is more than 1 year. It's 10, it's 20 years. We have software that really, really details things out of what this is going to look like over time. And so I wouldn't recommend you look at a tax plan from a 1-year perspective. It's going to change every year, especially what if tax rates change? What if tax rules change? What if the QCD goes away? What if the standard deduction gets significantly taken away? So all these things are going to impact the decisions we make. So right now we're planning with the information we have, and that's going to be the best information we have. But over time, we got to be able to adjust. We got to be able to change, because if we don't, then we're just going to be status quo, and we're going to just say, Uncle Sam, government, I trust you to make the right decisions for me. I'm not going to change because I know every single tax law change you make is in my favor, and I'm going to be set up for success. Is that actually true? Probably not, right? Especially if you've been a diligent saver. If you see anything of what they're trying to do, they're trying to tax people with more wealth. And if you have $1 million or more, you're in the top 10% in the entire country in net worth. And if you have $2 million or more, you may be in the top 5% in the entire country. And so if those are the people they're targeting those people with all this money in tax deferred, the people who have done the right thing over all these years. Well, now they see a big opportunity to seek that revenue is ultimately what they're looking at. And if you're following the trends, come 2035, a lot of this revenue is going to be coming available to the government because of that baby boomer generation, all getting to that point of either RMD or maybe they're passing away where now their kids are required to take it out in 10 years. All of this is going to play a part into this conversation. And so what I'm trying to basically just make sure you're clear of is proactive planning is key, and you want to be very strategic. You don't want to just say, I want to convert everything. Again, it's, you probably don't want to convert everything is typically what we're telling people. The times when it could make sense to convert everything, let's just talk about that, is maybe you have a high pension. Maybe your pension is really high and you're always going to be in a higher tax bracket. You're always going to be out of the standard deduction. Maybe you're not charitable like we talked about today. Then that could be a reason where you look to convert everything. But even in those times, I still don't love the idea just because so much can change over time. I like to have control. I like to have flexibility. And putting it all in a Roth means that we've locked in that tax rate and we won't have anywhere to pivot on going. But if you're convicted and you truly believe that you'll never see lower tax brackets again based on your situation, could make sense to do and convert everything right now, especially at the lower rates. But typically, we're not necessarily recommending that is what we see. So hopefully today's video could be helpful for you. Again, it's just, you got to make sure. You hear a lot of people in our industry. Some people say you shouldn't do any Roth conversions at all. Other people say you convert everything. You got to understand there's a balance. You got to understand both sides of it. You can't just be one-sided in this argument. You got to know what your specific situation is. There's some clients we do no Roth conversions. There's other clients we have that we do hundreds of thousands of dollars in Roth conversions every year. It's all dependent on your situation, and I hope you understand that as you watch these videos and you make sure you're getting the right help. And if you are looking for more specific guidance on your situation, feel free to reach out to us. We have a link below if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're on podcast, you can just go to our website and you can request a time to talk with our team just to see if we could potentially help you moving forward, to see what kind of help you're looking for. And even if we can't help you, at least make sure you're guided in the right direction, just so you make sure you get the right help moving forward is ultimately what we want to do for everyone who watches here. So with that being said, hopefully you enjoyed today's episode, and we will see you on the next podcast of Joe Knows Retirement.
Since we do not know your specific situation, none of this information can serve as tax, legal, insurance, or financial advice and may be outdated or inaccurate. The information comes from sources believed to be reliable but cannot be guaranteed. This content is prepared for educational purposes only. If you need advice, please contact a qualified CPA, attorney, insurance agent, financial advisor, or the appropriate professional for the subject you would like help with. Peak Retirement Planning, Inc. is an Ohio-based registered investment advisor and able to offer advisory services in Ohio and in other states where registered or exempt from registration.